Thanks for joining us. We are in Seattle's Ballard neighborhood, and we're going to be talking about crime, specifically crime affecting businesses in Seattle. To my right, we have business owners here from all over the city. We also have council member Sarah Nelson here, citywide council member, also Mike Stewart from the Ballard Alliance here in this location. And right now, where we're sitting is Steele Barber and Spa, the owner sitting right here to my right, Matt Humphrey, putting this event together. I don't want to steal too much of your thunder here, but you put this together because you want to talk about some of the issues that are facing business owners, and you want to find out solutions, more importantly, what can be done to help businesses, business owners, and ultimately customers and people who visit Seattle. So since it's your place, I'm going to give you the floor first, and then we'll go down the line, each person about a minute or so. Talk about who you are, introduce yourself, tell us about your business, why'd you choose Seattle, and then what are some of the issues that you've been facing. So, Matt, we're going to start with you here.
Thanks, Paul.
Go ahead.
Since it's Martin Luther King Day, I wanted to share a quote which kind of sets up this whole event. And it's: the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. And when it comes to crime in Seattle, I just don't want to be silent anymore. I've watched my friends in this room all suffer consistent break-ins, huge loss of retail, fear and loss of sleep, loss of money, loss of insurance in some cases like mine. And what I wanted to do was keep the lens on this issue because it continues to be one and it hasn't gone away. You see slight signs of it getting better, and then it shows right back up on the next block and the next block. So we really wanted to come together as a business community and see and really get our voices heard about what can we do about this? What do we want? What specifically do we want? So that's where, I called up a couple friends. I'm really honored and privileged to have this group in this room. They've all been affected by crime in different ways, but all very similar ways. So you're going to hear kind of a chorus of concern. And the big one is, safety. I want my staff to feel comfortable coming to work. I want my customers to feel safe coming to work. Ballard is the coolest neighborhood. This street is one of the coolest in Seattle proper. And we really are proud to be here, but it's really hard to do business when they keep breaking $6,000 windows like what happened to us on Thanksgiving. So really tonight is just a chance for us to speak out loud and say, hey, we don't want to cover this up. We want to make sure that this is continuing to be on the radar of City Council. We're privileged to have Sarah here tonight. So we want to just get our voices heard.
Hi, my name is Ethan Stoll. I'm the CEO of Ethan Stoll Restaurants. We've got about 20 restaurants in Seattle, all scattered around the neighborhoods. We're in Ballard with a couple, Freelord, which some of you know, Fremont, Queen Anne, downtown, Madrona, Madison Park, all the spots, right? So we're pretty well scattered around Seattle. I've been in the restaurant industry as an owner since 2003. And I love Seattle, man. I grew up here. I grew up on Capitol Hill. This is my home. This is where I want to raise my kids. This is where I want to retire. This is where I want to live my entire life. Just because I feel so connected to this city. I love it, right? I would say that, first off, I want to thank Matt for hosting. Thank you so much. The other thing I'll say is that Seattle's different. It just is. And I'd love to get to a point where businesses are allowed to thrive, people that are living on the streets or are homeless have the help they need, and people that are in need of assistance, get it. Obviously, I'm sympathetic to everybody, and I'm wanting to be part of the solution. We obviously do a fair amount of work in the community. We've been campaign chairs to United Way for a couple times. We've gotten engaged with Mary's Place. We've gotten engaged with the Fair Start. You name it, we do stuff. But as far as the issue of crime, yeah, it's exponentially higher than it was before. The first, I'd say, so we started in 2003. The first 17 years, say 15, 17 years, I'd probably say we probably had maybe 10 break-ins, right? In the last 3, we were probably at 60, 70, 80. So it's definitely more. And it's not necessarily, I mean, I don't really care about a window, right? And I'm sympathetic to people that feel like they need to break into a place to get something. But it's the message we're sending with a boarded up window, a boarded up front door. It's uninviting. It makes customers feel like it's not safe. Obviously, there's the financial costs. Matt says a $6,000 window. He's got better windows than I do. But we have front doors that cost a few $1,000s to break. Cost a few $1,000s to fix, and it's having it happen that many times is just. It's below the minimum of your insurance, so it comes out of pocket. You have a boarded door for 6 to 12 weeks because that's how long the lead time is for a pane of glass. It just doesn't make people feel safe. It's clearly something happened. And so for 12 weeks, if I have a boarded up door, 12 weeks of customers come in and know that community and that neighborhood is not safe. And that something happened there, and it doesn't feel good. My job is to make my customers feel welcome. And if there's something that I have no control over, like somebody breaking into my business, impacting that, there's long-standing impacts from that, that I have to suffer. And then, from the family perspective, that's the business side of things. I just like people to feel welcome and invited in our spaces. And then from the family perspective, we're down here in Ballard on Martin Luther King Day, which is obviously a great day. It's 6:30 at night. I live maybe a half a mile away. And I walked here, right? If I brought my kids, I wouldn't have walked. I wouldn't feel comfortable walking my kids a half mile in this neighborhood right now. So I walked down here fine because I'm, 48-year-old, 210-pound man. I feel fine. I feel just fine. But I wouldn't have walked my 8 and 10-year-old kids down here. I would have driven. So I left them at home. So I think that's the biggest thing is that, I want my kids to be raised in the same environment in Seattle that I was raised in, an environment that felt safe. It felt creative. It felt like there's artists everywhere. It felt like it was a super fun and engaging city. And now I have to be more cautious for my kids. So that's it.
Hi, thank you for the invitation, Matt. I'm probably going to echo so many of the same things that Ethan just said. My name is Lara Zahaba, and I am one of the owners of Stoop Brewing. Stoop is a family-friendly brewery and tap room in the industrial corridor. So we are east of the Ballard Bridge, actually, between Leary and Market. And we are one of, 12 breweries within a square mile in the Ballard Brewery District. And we actually chose Ballard because Ballard is our home. So when my husband and I founded the brewery together with our partner, we wanted to be in an industrial zone and we wanted to be in our neighborhood. We had always talked about the fact that if we ever were to have our own business, we wanted to serve a local community because we wanted to recognize the people that would be walking in our doors. And that's what we have tried to establish by being, real members of the community and working to support organizations in our city to help fund needs within our capacity to do so. Our primary goal, like every business owner here, is to make sure that our staff is safe and feels safe while working, and to make sure that our customers feel safe. So I say that as a business owner for sure. And I also say that as a resident of Ballard and as a mom, because while I'm seeing and hearing and experiencing in my own business crime on a regular basis, I'm also seeing and feeling that crime extend into the residential neighborhoods more and more recently. And I too share those fears for my own children. I live very close to a recent shooting incident on 85th Street. And my kids are of the age where they're walking themselves to school. And now I am afraid. I have to kind of force myself to let them do that, to experience growth, to experience their separation from when I could protect every moment of their every day. So the kinds of crime we've seen in the brewery range from, people walking into our space, trying to hide in corners of the brewery to inject drugs, finding people in our office spaces stealing and trying to walk out with things, stealing propane tanks and ripping apart all the outdoor structures, and the ways in which we've tried to create a warm and inviting winter environment for our customers. Things get torn apart and taken on a regular basis. And I don't want to necessarily speak for all of my colleagues in the Ballard Brewery District, but we're regularly communicating and we're sharing this kind of information, and I know that they are experiencing the same struggles and frustrations. And also, just noting that we're coming off of an exceptionally tragic weekend in Seattle in terms of gun violence and fatalities at small businesses in Seattle. So it's clear that Seattle has a growing problem, and we aren't in the positions to find all of the solutions or employ the solutions ourselves, and so we're asking for help. And what can the city do to make the city safer and to return us to the city that Ethan and I both know from earlier days?
My name is Burke Lyman, and I represent Ascent Outdoors. I help manage the business for the owner, Sandeep Nain, and I want to thank Matt for having this today. We are a small business, and we are our revenue is, I feel, smaller than a lot of the other businesses that are here today. And so replacing the glass in the front door for $2,000 is a hit. And so when you have to replace that 3 times in 3 months, and you have to replace it within 3 weeks of doing it the last time, we haven't replaced the glass on our front door because it just doesn't financially make sense for us to continue to do that. So we do have a nice painted piece of plywood on our front door still for the last 3 months. We have been broken into 5 times this year, and when I started working for Sandeep 3 years ago, it has doubled. That has doubled since I've worked there this year alone, or this last year alone. We are at the point of possibly losing our insurance carrier because of it. This hits home for me because I love this business. We strive to be a business that wants to bring the outdoors to all. Everybody is welcome at Ascent Outdoor. And what I see as managing the business and managing the people is that more of a keen eye on people that walk in, to the point of do I need to circle this person around the store? In-store theft is escalated as well. So it pains me to say, keep your eye on that person and not have that mentality of, hey, you're welcome. And we have a large homeless community that comes in. We have outdoor gear, and whether it's summer or winter, we always have things that people need to help them live on the street. And we have a nice regular group of homeless people that come in and pay us money, and we have a nice selection of some used gear where we can help make it very affordable for some quality gear for the homeless people in this community. But we have raised the question, Sandeep and I have raised the question on whether we can continue to do business in the Ballard area. And for a store that's had such a long time presence in Ballard, that's a painful conversation to bring up. And we want to stay here for a long time, but it has to make sense for us, for our business.
My name's Karen. I'm the owner of the Wax Bar. We have 3 locations, and I have to agree with you a lot. As being a small business owner, we've been broken into 4 times in the last couple of years, and when we're making our insurance claims, it's really hard because, again, we're at the point where they could drop us. We have had our door boarded up now for the last few months because a lot of that's out of pocket, or we don't know. We just kind of keep it up there thinking, well, maybe they won't come back and break into us. And we've had the painful conversation too of do we close one of our locations? We've been open for 15 years, and my staff doesn't feel safe sometimes coming in. They don't know what they're going to walk into, and it's just, I have to say, it's just really scary. And I just feel like there's, not a lot of consequences. I just don't know what to do anymore. It's just really frustrating and hard. And I just hope that things can maybe change and we get some help.
I'm Stephen Naramore. This is my wife, Diana. We are the owners of the Ballard and Greenwood Sip and Ship. 2023 is our 21st year in business. Sip and Ship is a coffee house shipping gift store. We started in Ballard. We're proud to be in Ballard. Although I do echo a lot of people, it is difficult seeing very far in advance kind of what's going on at the moment. Our 2 stores have been vandalized or broken into multiple times over the years. That's too many to count. Police response has slowed from 30 minutes to 3 to 4 hours, and sometimes not at all when they come out. Our crew are often left to deal with increasingly aggressive behavior. A common position for one of our baristas is to stand by the front door with her hand on the deadbolt lock because somebody is pacing back and forth in crisis in front of the store, and we're just worried, terrified that they're going to come in, and we don't know really what's going to happen from there. The most recent indignation is getting dropped by our insurance company because of too many claims and because we're located, as we were told, in the city of Seattle. That's why we were dropped. And the only coverage we currently have is for total loss. As business owners within our communities, we understand there is not one silver bullet that can cure and eradicate all of these problems. We want our city council members to lead, to implement small changes for the greater good and for the long run, to invest in and make progress to protect our shared public spaces, to safeguard our youth, families, and businesses, to think creatively and offering up and implementing more than just one idea or solution. We get it. It's a complex issue, but one we want to talk about, understand, progress, and solve together. So thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Kevin. This is my wife, Sabrina. Together we own 2 businesses, one in the Wallingford neighborhood and Queen Anne Dispatch, located on Queen Anne. Obviously, our story isn't any different than anybody here. I would like to spend my time and just say that the people up here are what make the neighborhoods the place that you want to live, and they're under threat. And so I just would ask the community to pay attention this coming election season, because there's a lot riding on what happens at the next city council election. Seattle is under threat, as noticed, talked about earlier. I mean, it's a rough weekend for our first weekend of our new police chief. And that it's going to be a long stretch for her. It's going to be a long stretch for City Council, and certainly a long stretch for us. We need to make changes, and I think the Seattle City Council's #1 job should be to protect the citizens of Seattle, and we're here collectively begging for help. If you go to next door, it is littered with comments of break-ins. It is a non-stop issue. And to the citizens of Seattle, it's time to pay attention. It's time to get engaged. It's time to organize your priorities and your wants for your family, and make those voices heard, make those comments heard, because we're headed down a path that none of us want.
I do want to get some reaction from both of you all here. Citywide, Councilmember Sarah Nelson, Mike Stewart with the Ballard Alliance. We'll start with you, Councilmember. Business owner yourself, and so you're familiar with the space, and you heard all of these stories here. There's a lot of pain, a lot of emotion behind what is going on. There's concerns about safety, but there are concerns about whether this will still be possible for me to do this here in Seattle. Will I be able to keep doing business here if there isn't a fix? So generally, what's your reaction when you hear each of these stories from those here today?
You're right. I hear exactly what you're saying, and this is what keeps me up at night as the chair of economic development. So I am not going to tell you, here's what, my reaction is that I thank you for speaking out, and you're right. It's about silence, but it's also about our side, the people in positions to make change, hearing and doing. And so I know that, I mean, when I talk about this with my colleagues or other, people in city government, what I'm really thinking is, how would you feel if you put your life savings into a business and it's not viable, not because it was a bad business model or something like that, but it's because you can't afford to keep repairing your exterior, or because you're worried about your staff's safety. And to think about having to lose it all simply because the city government isn't doing its job to provide an adequate level of public safety, which is our primary responsibility, that makes me sick. It makes me feel I know that we can do better. And I am identifying with what you are saying. I agree with you. I hear it from businesses all over the city. And what's notable, I think that what I want people to know is that you're small businesses, and this is not about property crime. Every single one of you mentioned safety. Even before you mentioned the cost of repairing your exteriors, or maybe I don't remember if any of you talked about the value of what is getting stolen out of your shops. You're talking about the safety of your staff, your customers, your family members, etc. So it's time that people realize that, yes, this is about violent crime as well. And thank you very much for mentioning what happened over this weekend, because this is it's grave. And so I guess my response is I'm trying everything I possibly can do, but now is not the time for me to tell you the things I've done. It's not enough. And it's going to take all of us working together on in the city family to make it so that you can continue to do business in Seattle, and that you thrive. So it's our responsibility, and I hear you.
These are conversations we have all the time. So I'm director of the Ballard Alliance. We're an organization, an improvement organization that is set up to help business owners and residents in the core of Ballard help create and maintain a really vital, thriving district. And we are formerly the Ballard Chamber, and in 2017 we merged or re-evolved as the Ballard Alliance. And there are organizations like ours all around the city. And I will also like to thank Councilmember Nelson, because I think it must have been your first or second day in office when I got a phone call from Councilmember Nelson inviting myself and others representing organizations from around the city to come to your committee meeting and have a conversation about economic development. But what is a key driver for economic development is having a safe and thriving business district. So we've started those conversations, and I know, in fact, you were in our meeting this week, and we really appreciate your support in being there to listen to those issues. So I talk to business owners every day, and this is such a great representation of business owners, and I'll add on to the fact that there are so many small businesses that are oftentimes husband and wife owned, and you know that there's a mortgage and a second mortgage that's all riding on this, and really the stakes are high, and this is really very real. As an organization, so when we formed in 2017, private security was not on our mind, right? It wasn't built into our work program and our plan. And then when the pandemic hit and we started seeing things get boarded up, we did two things. We helped facilitate the boarding up of windows and getting artists out to paint those murals, if you remember back to the spring of 2020, to put the murals on the boards and really try and liven our district. And then the second thing we did is we were able to shift some funds and add some private security. But it's not enough. And an organization like ours, a private organization or amalgamation of business owners, cannot be expected to provide security, basic safety and security. And it can help, but it's not the solution. And I think as I was reflecting on your feedback and your comments, and what I appreciate about this conversation right now is the biggest concern for us as Seattle residents, Ballard residents, Seattle residents, is we can't become complacent about this, and we can't just let this be the norm, right? Well, that's the way it is. I've had my window broken in, smashed 3 times. Because once we do that, we've sort of given up. And I think everybody here in this room, and I know the business owners and residents in Ballard want to help and be part of solutions. but we certainly are asking for more city support. And I think we need to get back to those days of having some beat patrols, having some flexibility to have a bike squad come in and do some emphasis when these things happen. And right now, over the last couple years, the ability to get some emphasis patrols in an area that's been hit by crime, just it hasn't happened for a lot of reasons. And I think we have to get back to that because these business owners need it. And we need to be super strategic about solving crime. And when it starts to hit in one area, we do need the city to be connecting those dots and helping to identify where is this problem coming from, how do we solve it, and I think that's got to be a big part of our way forward.
What would you like to see the city do?
Yeah, Paul, it's really simple. We'd like to see more police on the streets, especially in business districts where people gather. We'd like to see prosecution of petty crime or what's considered petty crime, or even felonies. There's a backlog in the city. I watch the news like everyone else. It's painful to see that the word on the street is you can get away with coming in and robbing me. I'm a small business, like Mike said. It's my wife and I. My whole life is tied to this place. If I go down, I lose my house, my family loses their house, I lose everything, and 40 people go on the street looking for jobs. So that's real. And I think what we'd really like to see is quick action. I think if you can't get police hired and on the streets, then maybe some sort of tax break for private security. If we can't get that, broken windows are broken windows. I agree with Ethan. Those are replaceable. What's not replaceable is me being able to sleep at night because I'm worried the phone is going to ring because it's only one person calling. It's Washington Alarm. And they're calling me because one of my 3 places is getting broken into. And that has a toll. And what I'd like to do is like I said, get my city back. What happened to Seattle? We have a lot of common sense, really smart, compassionate people. So let's get this done. The mayor says all the right things. Several of the city council members say the right things, but for some reason, the legislation isn't passing to get these guys back on the street. So let's get it done because we need it to happen now.
Obviously we need to hire more police officers. I think the vilifying of police officers is a tough thing. There's a few bad actors that have obviously ruined it for the group. But I know a lot of great police officers, really nice, really compassionate people. And it would be nice to have people walking the streets in the neighborhoods. That kind of relationship with the community is really important. They understand who the business owners are. They understand what they're dealing with. They understand the bad actors in the neighborhood. So having more patrol officers on foot would be great. We've talked about, and there has been some movement on improving or reimbursing for graffiti and vandalism and break-ins. Having that be a little bit more robust of a program would be great. I think it's important to at least send the message from the city that, hey, we understand the problems you're dealing with and we're working on them, and you shouldn't have to bear the financial costs yourself. Because business owners are taxpayers, so I think that's something that could be would be a nice benefit for people, just because it does get to be a lot. Just because you're a business owner does not mean you're wealthy, right? I've had multiple years in my career where I wasn't in the top 10 highest paid employees in my own company, and that was because I wanted to grow it, but it was also out of necessity. So I think it's important that to recognize that people, that just because you own a business does not mean you're rolling in cash. So I think it's important to be supportive of that. And, I think just in general, having the city take a little bit more sense of action towards public safety. It doesn't feel important right now, and that's the sense I get. So.
Appreciate it, Matt. Ethan. Anybody else from the group want to add anything maybe new that they hadn't said or something that's on your mind?
Yeah, this is going in a little bit of a different direction, but particularly when Steve and Diana were sharing the story of their employee, at the door, excuse me, with someone outside clearly experiencing distress. I want to know I want to know what we do in those situations, a real-time solution. And I'm talking about assistance for the person that's in distress as much as I'm talking about, whatever we might need in front of our own business at any given time. I have had so many of these experiences, and we feel like we're not supposed to call 911 in those instances. We don't want to escalate a situation or pull the police department away from a crime. But right now, if you call the non-emergency line at 911, nobody's answering the phone. There's no way to leave a message, and they tell you not to call 911. And none of the other organizations have the active 3-digit numbers that are supposed to be available for the public searching for assistance for people in distress. The county's not up and running yet, or at least the last time I was involved in a situation at my own business. And then when I reach out to an organization like DESC that I know is working on the streets, the response there is that they could get an outreach person to me in 7 days to start the conversation with the person in distress in an effort to build trust in order to get that person to accept assistance. So that's great. I mean, I want all of those things to happen. But I don't know what to do in the moment, how to change the situation, solve the problem, help the person. I would like the city to tell us how to handle those situations.
Having somebody completely catatonic sitting at one of our tables outside, how do we deal with that person? All of my employees are laser focused on that person, where we have customers afraid to come in the door because of what's happening. So not having the tools, we still automatically will call 911 often, if somebody comes in the store, which does happen quite often, we'll do that basically as a threat to that person to you got to leave, we're calling 911. Well, they pretty much know that's not going to do any good anyway. So yeah, I think more police is a great idea. Excuse me. I think that's just one area, and we need multiple areas, and having the people who are out to talk to these people who are in crisis, or to help them get off the street, to get back into their homes, get off drugs, or help to solve whatever situations they're going through. We need another group of people, which I know has been bandied around, and whether or not those people are out there, they're already probably stretched pretty thin. But that's something. It's not one thing. It's just not just more police. That's not going to necessarily solve. That'll certainly solve a portion of it, but we also need to look at both ends.
How feasible is it to do all of this quickly? Because they want quick results here.
Well, that's key here, is the urgency. So I know that what you're talking about is an alternate response, a non-uniformed response to people in crisis. Unfortunately, Lara, I think that if you asked anybody in the city, what should we do, there would be so many scenarios that there would not be good advice, and it would ultimately come to call the non-emergency line perhaps. And so we're back in that same circle. Sounds a little bit like what some of the folks are talking about bringing back. You talked about beat cops, is the NAV team, which did have more interaction with community. I understand the need to have an alternative response, but I think we've got to get the basics right. I'm just going to say it. I think that yes, it's important to be looking at an alternative model, but if we can't even respond to emergencies right now, that's a problem. And so I think that we can do both at the same time, but I really also feel that we have got to solve the problem of, first of all, getting response quickly, and also what is at the root of so many people needing a crisis response. And people aren't talking about that. My thinking is that that addiction is a big part of this issue, and that was a top priority during the budget, because we have got to, no amount of all these different nonprofits who say that I'll get there next week after I form a trusted relationship with this person, etc., is going to help if we're not really looking at, are we doing enough with with the drugs that are flooding our city that we are not providing adequate resources to address.
So on addiction services, is there something this year that you might be able to propose, or something that you want to propose?
I'm taking another bite at the apple.
Do you think your other council members would be on board? Do you think you'd be able to pass something in your realm that you'd want to, policy on?
I am
this?
always optimistic.
What would you like to see done with addiction service? What would you like to see done address that before we get to the law?
What has to happen is that we have to make it friction-free access, because when somebody has decided that they want to stop using, we have to be able to get them in immediately. That means contracting with providers so that there is no waiting period and there is no that there is immediate encouragement and facilitation of getting somebody into a recovery-based program. Yes, I recognize that the methadone and the opioid use disorder treatment that is there right now is absolutely necessary to stabilize people, and it can help folks get their lives back together. But if opioids are not the issue, then or people really do want to be able to get off drugs and stay clean, then we have to have a more comprehensive menu of choices. So, and you have to be able to get in right away. Anyway, that's just a long way of saying that we have to be much more comprehensive in what we provide access for.
I know more police has been brought up multiple times here, but everybody knows how understaffed the Seattle Police Department is. And that's a continued conversation. How do you get back to appropriate levels, or what the police chief thinks are appropriate levels, to be able to respond adequately? And I know other things have been mentioned about private security or tax breaks. At this point, can you just keep saying we need more police, or should you just move on and say we can still try to get more police, but let's focus on doing something else?
All of the above. We don't take one tack. So we look at what's up with those incentives that were passed last year. What has been the response? Are we seeing a positive trend? That's what I want to know. It's also doing everything else on the recruitment and retention plan that we passed. But it's everything. We can't afford not to try everything. I don't think that one solution is at the exclusion of another. You mentioned neighborhood safety hubs. Let's do that. Let's also reimburse for damage to storefronts. Everything that we can possibly do, because you know why? You are the job creators and the hubs of your neighborhoods. We cannot afford to lose any more businesses. And I hate to take it afford as if it's a monetary thing. You're the heart and soul of Seattle. And so nothing should be off the table.
Well, and to add on to that, we have talked before, businesses provide the tax base for the city and for a lot of these services that you are talking about. So you can't afford to lose businesses here, and this is something that needs to be acted upon with urgency.
Right, so what we have to do is we just have to, first of all, listen to what you are saying, listen to what you need, and then do that. It sounds simple, but there are a lot of hurdles, but that is the mindset that I want to see adopted by everybody who's making any kind of decision in City Hall, is that we think about not just doing no harm to small businesses, but helping them survive and thrive.
Providing, one more thing, and I'll get to you here, providing money to help them with security and things like that. Do you think that's something?
There is a constitutional prohibition of the gifting of public funds to private entities, so that is but there are, that is why we have partners such as BIAs and other nonprofit fiscal agents that we could work with. So I think that whoever said be creative, that's what we have to do.
Is there one thing that you can put in this year, policy-wise, that may address some of this?
Wow. Anything, any little practical, small, policy-wise thing is going to sound like a drop in the bucket. You all are thinking, and your thought bubbles are, these are teensy-weensy things that's not going to help. You feel like you're screaming into the void, right? You want to shake us and say, that's not going to come close to helping. So I do want to see increased emphasis patrols and, exploring the grants for private security.
I want to thank you and my fellow business owners for coming together, and Councilwoman Sarah Nelson and Mike Stewart from Ballard Alliance, because just taking a minute to sit down and listen to us feels a little bit like group therapy for business owners in Seattle, but we need a little therapy, and what we really need are answers, and what we really need is action. So I'm hopeful that just by you guys showing up and giving the chance for all these really smart, intelligent, hardworking business owners to speak about what's really going on, that someone's going to listen. Seattle's going to listen. The person that lives in Queen Anne or Crown Hill or Rainier Valley, wherever you live, that you're listening and you understand we're not just this elite group of people. We're hardworking small business owners that really care about the city, and we want to create a great place for you to live. I don't know who would vote against not restoring police back into the picture. To Mike's point, just get the baseline back. We don't have to have a police state. Let's just get it safe again. So thank you for listening, and thank you for putting this out there and putting a lens on our reality. This is our reality 7 days a week, 24/7. So we really appreciate it.